Ladies and gents, welcome back. We're only a few days into this inquiry now. First day back this week, and we're just seeing how far we've come along. And today I wanted to bring on Tom Marazzo to speak about exactly what's been going on. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And where are we so far with this inquiry? Because I'm seeing not a lot to do with the justification for the use of the Emergencies Act, which I believe that the whole inquiry was about. Where are we?
Well, if you reflect on our lead attorney Brendan Miller on his comments and his opening remarks to the inquiry, a lot of the accusations you're not going to hear any proof of it. And so far, after the third day of testimony, we have yet to hear anything that even remotely tickles the idea that the emergency use or emergency act was even warranted in any way. What we're just hearing is just constant fumbling behind the scenes, and just sort of gross incompetence. I have to say, I don't know how to else to characterize it. And I think the people that were in a position to make good decisions got taken off the board, and I think the people that were making important decisions were probably the wrong people to be making those decisions to begin with.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing today. Actually, what was the quote of the day? I put this out on Twitter. A crescendo of collapsing confidence. That was Steve Kalinakos in his
Yeah.
testimony, and
Yeah.
that's. It seems like that's where we're at. There's a lot of statements as to whether or not there was organization within the organizers of the convoy, yourself included,
Mhm.
to move vehicles out of the way, which would indicate that there was some sort of wiggle room being made and negotiations, and no need essentially for the invocation of the act.
Yeah. So that is true. Like, we were in negotiations, but it's hard. It's important to understand this point. Every truck driver is an individual or independent owner operator. So from our point of view, this being a massive grassroots movement, we had no authority over any individual truck.
Mm-hmm.
It was ordinary Canadians who were truck drivers that came here of their own free will to support the convoy. And we did the best we could to communicate our strategy that we were trying to do. And then we always informed the city that, look, we agree with helping you do certain things like relieving the pressure on the residents themselves, but then we're going to take it back to the truckers and let each and every individual trucker make decisions for themselves, right? And there were frustrating times for us because we felt we were acting in good faith, and what we heard today was all this confusion in the background between the city, the police, different police jurisdictions, different government entities that basically screwed it all up. And the mainstream media attacked us as being the reason that these things broke down, when in fact we really had very little to do with it. We were willing and ready to work with the city to remain safe and responsible, and to keep emergency lanes and things like that open. But yet you heard the testimony today. They kept bungling it from all their own internal infighting.
Now, one thing I
So
was really noticeable in the testimony was there was a moment where he had mentioned, I think it was in Cross, that there was no identifier. They had no way of counting the trucks. Now, they tried to count how many trucks had moved off of the residential
mhm.
streets, and at one point they determined that they were only counting big rigs, and yet there was a lot of like small trucks, SUVs, things like that. They were moving off of these streets, but they hadn't been counting them, and then they all just put their hands in the air. It seems that that's what we're hearing in the testimony.
Well, I too actually went through something very similar with what we were doing. But I'll say this: the city of Ottawa, or their integrated command and control system. I can't remember the acronym for it, but they controlled the CCTVs, and I remember them shutting them down to public view. And they also had UAVs in the air. So I think technologically, the law enforcement were in a much better position to quantify the number of vehicles and people than anyone else was. And I find it a little bit disingenuous to believe that narrative when you consider you're saying that you have no situational awareness on the outside perimeter of Parliament. I don't know. That sounds a little off to me, but going back to my own personal experience with this, I know we struggled to do the same thing because for the technology we had was basically our eyeballs. We had to physically go out and count, but when trucks were coming and going in and out of the city, at some point you just kind of had to give up on trying to count it and understand where everybody was.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like the problem was just completely unmanageable. So in a way, depending on which government agency, I understand their frustration was not getting accurate numbers. But on the other hand, you guys have the availability of all the latest technology to be able to get those numbers before we ever could have.
Right. And at the end of the day, at the end of his testimony, we saw photographs that were taken of these streets actually had been emptied out, and there was empty photographs of these streets. So again, like I said at the beginning, the whole idea of this hearing at all is for the justification, the government's justification for the use of the Emergencies Act. I believe that people are using it for their own either political situations or I don't know, just griping.
Yeah, I picked up on that too.
Yeah, a lot of hearsay. As we talked yesterday with Eva, she said this is allowed in the testimony, but ultimately it's going to be Rouleau who says whether that will be looked at or not. Now I have this from Andrew Lawton. He put this out on Twitter from an Ottawa Police Service intelligence officer briefing before the Freedom Convoy set out to Ottawa. Their intention is to hold a peaceful demonstration, and there is no indication of hostility. So this is the intelligence they had moving into it, and then what happened there?
Well, I mean, it's not surprising to me that reliable intelligence analysis and sources would be rejected if it doesn't fit into a higher level narrative that the government of Canada wanted to see. So the fact that the intelligence summary that was given to various levels of government was outright rejected just kind of goes to show you that if you're not listening to your people on the ground and you're making high level decisions, it's obvious that you're working towards a very different agenda, right?
I see.
In the military, we kind of have this sort of philosophy of you've got to trust the people on the ground making the decisions, right? And what you saw was people on the ground in Ottawa for the intelligence analysts were making recommendations and doing their own analysis, and it was being rejected. And what did we get? We got February 18th and 19th.
Yeah, right. So we have to look forward to seeing you on the stand. Do we have a date for that, or is that to be announced?
No, I saw a tentative lineup where people from the Freedom Convoy would be, I believe, like the second last group of people to go through, and then I think the final group is going to be the government.
Okay.
So the witness list, as you know, is quite extensive, and it's not complete. I know there's applications to add more names to the list itself, and I think we will be given our opportunity towards closer to the end of the inquiry, and then the government, I think, the Prime Minister and Freeland and all them will go probably towards the end. They'll be the last group to go through because it is them, after all, that are under scrutiny. That is the intent of this inquiry.
That is the purpose. Us. Yeah, that's the purpose. We want to get to the bottom of this. Well, thanks for joining me today. We'll hopefully get to the bottom of this within the next 30 days, but I'm sure we'll see you again, both on the stand and hopefully have you back on the channel again to give more commentary.
I'd love to come back.
What's going on. All right, cheers. Thank you so much, Tom.
Awesome.
And thank you guys for coming out today and watching this video. Looking forward to providing more coverage on this as this inquiry goes on for the next 30 days, and then as it's as as it gets processed before February, when it's actually meant to be submitted. So we'll see how this goes. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.